This podcast is made possible by your support and your donations. Thank you. And by the purchase of my book called Everyday Buddhism, Real-Life Buddhist Teachings and Practices for Real Change. I will post an affiliate link to the book on Amazon in the show notes. And if you've already read it, please take a minute to rate and review. And also consider purchasing it again for a friend or family member as a gift. Welcome to Everyday Buddhism, making every day better by applying the proven tools found in Buddhist concepts. Welcome to episode 120 of Everyday Buddhism, making every day better. A quick note before we start the episode, don't forget to listen after the podcast for some new things happening over at the Everyday Buddhism Patreon, where more offerings are available to public Patreon members and all tiers of the Everyday Buddhism Patreon. But now to the episode. In June of 2018, I launched my podcast, Everyday Buddhism. At 65 years old, I reached what felt like the end of my work as a career coach and behavioral analyst. It was 9 years since I was inducted as a lay minister and sensei with the Bright Dawn Center of Oneness Buddhism, and I felt a call to share the wisdom and practices I learned from my Bright Dawn ministry training and from more than 2 decades as a Buddhist practitioner. I needed to share it with a wider audience. Coaching and lay ministry are very much alike. It's a way to accompany another on their journey, walking with them and occasionally suggesting alternate paths and perspectives. I felt well equipped to move beyond one-on-one coaching and into a lay ministry relationship with a more wide-ranging audience of podcast listeners. What a journey. Starting the podcast was a solo adventure at first. My initial focus was learning the ins and outs of the technology, platforms, marketing, promotion. And throughout that early period, I never quite expected it to be much more than a way for me to communicate what I thought were the powerful benefits coming from a Buddhist view. In some ways, I guess it felt more like a hobby. But the podcast quickly hit the top 10 charts of Buddhist podcasts on Apple and other major platforms, and downloads kept growing and growing. The energy created by its success energized me, and I devoted more time to planning, writing, recording, editing, and marketing. It was fun, but it was stealthily becoming an enterprise rather than a ministry. It was like a ministry because there were no financial rewards despite success in the charts. And it was a ministry because I was driven by a deep sense of purpose, sharing my experience and content that allowed me to connect with listeners on a meaningful level and rooted in the joy of giving and service. As the podcast achieved more recognition, its success sneakily shifted my focus to continued growth and recognition. The original goal of genuine sharing subtly evolved to a focus on what was good for continued podcast recognition. Big names in Buddhism and related areas reached out through their agents and publishing companies, sending books and requesting to be guests on the show. And of course, that was seductive. Reading great books for free and being able to talk with amazing people without even trying was a definite rush. But this kind of success created an enterprise that I was working for in a way that I didn't feel as if it was my own. It was exhilarating, which disguised how I was being limited by the expectations of potential guests and of listeners. They saw me in the podcast as the enterprise of Everyday Buddhism, and I did too. I didn't realize how much I felt driven to read book after book that was aligned to a goal that was more about book sales for the author and the market target interest of the listeners, and less about what I wanted to share. It felt like I had to, like it was my job. I was losing balance and losing my why by focusing on this one thing, the work of the podcast. I fell victim to a sort of golden handcuff syndrome. I felt I had to keep doing it this way, reading the hot books and interviewing the emerging Buddhist stars, all while I was feeling trapped by the content and focus. So here I am, now, wondering if I lost my why or if I hadn't realized it changed. I haven't lost interest in Buddhism, but I've been feeling creatively constrained by Buddhist-only content. If you want to hear more about how important understanding what your why is, I talked about that in my second podcast episode titled, What is Your Why? Now, the podcast has been such a meaningful space for me, a way to explore, connect, and grow with all my listeners. But more recently, I've noticed that the creative spark that once fueled these episodes has started to dim. Part of this is simply the natural rhythm of creativity. I feel myself evolving and being drawn toward a wider, more spacious range of ideas and conversations than the current podcast focus or title really allows. And this leads me to a decision to take a break from the podcast, re-releasing popular episodes for a while as I devote more time to writing and exploring ideas that expand my philosophical range on Substack. I plan to explore perennial philosophy, consciousness studies, mysticism, and contemplative traditions more broadly in my Substack, but also possibly in new podcast episodes right here. Buddhism will still be part of the conversation, but not the only lens. Now, this isn't a goodbye. It's simply a pause for renewal, both creative and personal. To everyone who has listened, written in, and shared this journey with me, thank you, thank you, thank you. Your presence and encouragement have meant more than I can say. But stay tuned to my Substack and this podcast as I travel the new territory that might end up being something like an exploration of the contemplative mind. That's it for this episode. Now to some details about our Patreon community, as I suggested at the beginning of the podcast episode. As I have talked about previously, we have opened up our community through Patreon, making it more accessible for all listeners of this podcast who might like a place to hang out with others. I hope you check out the Patreon community where we offer insight, reflections, Dharma talks, everyday Sangha membership, and podcast extras, plus areas for discussion and support. And we're now offering more on Patreon for all members, including recordings of my Dharma talks during Sangha gatherings offered to public Patreon members and Bodhisattva level Patreon. There are 4 Patreon membership tiers, starting at $3 a month for the Bodhisattva level. Then the $5 a month tier includes Sangha and community membership and podcast extras. And the $8 a month tier includes a free subscription to the Everyday Buddhism Substack, where you'll find the new content I'm planning on writing and recording, my new book as serial posts, my other podcast, Words from My Teachers, although new episodes are no longer added. All 67 episodes will remain for you to listen to, plus a Zen koans for everyday section, and other articles and practice areas. And at $20 a month, you can meet with me, Wendy Shinyo Sensei, virtually through Zoom once a month for about an hour to discuss your spiritual journey and practice, and to ask questions and discuss Buddhism. The Everyday Sangha practices and learns together on the first Saturday of the month at 10 a.m. U.S. Eastern Time. And on the third Saturday of the month, we also meet together for a study and sharing session. And that's also at 10 a.m. U.S. Eastern Time. Just go to the Everyday Buddhism website and become a community member by joining the Patreon community. Go to www.everyday-buddhism.com and click on the link that says Membership. Or you can join through Patreon at patreon.com/everydaybuddhism. You can subscribe to my Substack as part of the Patreon tier or by itself, where you can find the new content I am planning on releasing, the chapters of my second book, Living Life as It Is, Looking for Right View in the Fog of Delusion. I plan to write more in that book as fall turns into winter. Links to joining Patreon and Substack are posted in the show notes. I thank all of you who contribute in any way. This podcast, my Patreon community, the broader community, the Everyday Sangha, all of it depends on your donations to continue to exist. I do not seek podcast sponsors and do not ask for financial commitments through paid podcast memberships. So my work and the costs needed to support what I do is entirely self-funded except for your donations. Please consider a one-time or continuing donation through Patreon or on my website's Donate tab, or just buy me a coffee using the coffee cup link on the website. And thanks to all of you who write in with comments and questions. Another way you can help is to rate and review the podcast on your favorite podcast platform. It's important to share the podcast with others if you find it helpful in your life. And if you could, take a minute to comment so other people know why you do love Everyday Buddhism. That's all for the announcements. So until next time, keep finding ways to make yours and everyone's days better.